PhotoShelter is the leader in online portfolio websites and tools for professional photographers. We help you get business, do business, and keep business.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris Owyoung coming to you from PhotoShelter World Headquarters here in New York City. And today we're going to be talking photography workflow and basically how to improve it. And with me today, we are very lucky to be joined by Mr. Jared Bauman. And Jared is a photographer and also the founder of ShootDotEdit, which, as you'll find out in a minute, he has a lot of experience with how to improve one's workflow and how to actually figure out the points where you can improve and what to do about it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Jared.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. It's nice to be here with you. I think we were talking about it earlier, that how normally I'm not able to do these webinars or whatnot in person. It's a lot of fun to be actually out here in New York at the same time and doing this with you in person, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Let me give you guys a little bit of a background on myself, and then we'll jump in. We got a lot of tips, tricks, and thoughts to go through here today on how to improve your workflow. My name is again Jared Bauman. I've been a professional photographer since 2002. Founded Bauman Photographers, which is a studio in San Diego, California, and we would do about 80 weddings a year and about 1,500 corporate headshots a year as well.
Wow.
So we did that. I did that for 11 years, and then at the very end of last year, sold that. I still shoot and photograph weddings for the company. I don't run it anymore, and that's because ShootDotEdit, which is the other company that I founded with my business partner Garrett, was growing so much that it just became too much to run both companies. So I still shoot quite a bit for Bauman Photographers, but don't participate in the day-to-day of it. And at ShootDotEdit, it became really important because of the number of photographers that we work with and the images we go through every day, that systems became even more important. And so over the years, workflow, strategy, pricing, systems, these have become specialties of mine that I really love to help photographers with and help photographers set up those systems. Over the years, I think I've learned more that creatives don't necessarily gravitate towards setting up systems. It's not necessarily something that they get out of bed in the morning and get excited about.
No, I certainly don't.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't say I get out of bed and get excited about it. It's not like the first thing I want to do, but I definitely have that right brain that has an interest in setting up systems and in setting up things that allow you to be more productive and your business to succeed for you. If you set up a great system, you basically are setting up your business to succeed every single time you do a shoot. Every single time you go out and meet with a client, you're setting up your business to succeed for you. And then you also get more freedom to participate in all the other things that you enjoy along the way. I mean, we got in this to be photographers, and yet so much of us spend our days doing the things that our system can handle. And so what I want to really look at today is just different ideas, different strategies to improve the systems that we have, and that's something that, again, over the years, we've just really gotten a handle on and a grasp on at ShootDotEdit and whatnot. So anyways, just going through some photos here of mine as we get started.
And so, Jared, can you sort of define what you would consider a system? Because when I hear words like workflow and system thrown around a lot, a little piece of me, the creative piece of me, cringes inside and says, that sounds like work and something I really don't want to do.
Well, actually, we'll start with this definition here and go from there, because I think that's a great question. A workflow, which is really an elaborate name for a system. I mean, a workflow is designed to be a set of relationships between all the activities in a project, and it needs to encompass start to finish. And we all have a workflow, whether we've sat down and defined it or not. We all have this workflow that we go about whenever we do a shoot, beforehand, afterwards, the whole process from start to finish. And we have it whether we've sat down and defined it. So it helps to kind of know that it's there. We go about a system to accomplish the job that we're shooting every single time, and oftentimes, most of the time, we don't take the time to write it down, to look at it, to examine it, to improve it, to make it a little more optimized, a little more streamlined. And because of that, there's usually a lot of holes, usually a lot of areas that we can make it better. And so, and let's be honest, in our industry, a photographer's workflow is a very long and complicated string of events that begins at booking and ends when the final products are shipped to the customer. And this long and complicated process that we go through, whether we're wedding photographers, portrait photographers, landscape, product, commercial. I mean, the list goes on. We all have a workflow. And what we don't want to do is just continue going through a workflow that we haven't defined, isn't set up for success, isn't optimized, and isn't streamlined. So we don't want to continue doing that. The example I like to talk about a lot is when you think about a juggler. And I love this graphic too, by the way. It's great. But think about a juggler. Everything, at least when I watch juggling, I'm not a juggler myself, but when I watch juggling, everything looks perfectly in sync. It looks fairly easy. And I tried it myself, and I found it to be next to impossible. I get like 2 oranges in the air, and then somebody tries to throw in a third
and then a
one
chainsaw, and then
right into the fire, and then everything, my arm falls off. But but that's our workflow. We have a bunch of balls all in the air at once, and if sometimes we have a few, slow season, or maybe when we're starting off, we have a few balls that we're juggling in the air, and it's not that bad. We can handle it, and we don't really need to worry about practicing. We don't really need to worry about defining what our workflow looks like. When we're getting started, this is especially true. We're just kind of getting going, or in the beginning, and so we just have a few balls here. And when you think about it, a juggler, when he only has a few balls there, can misthrow a ball a little bit, can toss a little too high, can get distracted, something like that, and they can recover. It's not that big of a deal. But as you start to add more and more balls, as you start to see these jugglers who are tossing 5, 6 balls in the air at once, it starts to get more complicated. You first need to be way more experienced at it. Everything's going well, but then what happens when something goes wrong? When maybe you misjudge. At that point, when you have 5, 6, 7 balls in the air and you misjudge one, something can go wrong. And it's not just a mistake that affects that one ball. What ends up happening? Everything falls.
Everything falls to the ground.
Everything falls to the ground, and that is, from everything I've seen, that's what happens with our workflow if we don't set it up and optimize it. It's not that big of a deal when we're slow. It's not that big of a deal when we're getting started. But as we get busier and busier, as busy season hits, like right now in the middle of October, I know at ShootDotEdit, this is our busiest time editing photos for photographers. As busy season hits, if we have one small problem that comes up in the workflow, if we have one thing that gets late, one thing that gets delayed, just one thing that goes wrong, it can ruin our entire workflow. And that's bad because that affects our customers. It affects not only us and our stress, it affects our happiness, but most importantly, it affects our customers in a really adverse way. And so just like the juggler dropping the balls, one mishap, delay, memory lapse, missed email, missed deadline, everything comes undone. You can set up a system, though, that doesn't allow that to happen. The better your system is, the less you have to worry about that. So that's kind of why this is important. The solution is to set up a workflow that is systematized, that's optimized, and efficient for whatever it is you're doing. So that's what we're going to be kind of going into today. So let's look at some common bottlenecks in a workflow. These are common things that photographers have to do, whether it's daily, whether it's weekly, whether it's per shoot, whether it's just on an ongoing basis. And these are areas that our workflow can get really backed up and bottlenecked. These are areas where things can go wrong. And if we keep with the juggling, the proverbial balls can drop and fall to the ground. Editing is obviously top of the list for me. I mean, it's one thing when you have a workflow set up and it's designed to be able to handle 1 shoot a week, but what happens when you book 2 shoots? Or what happens when there's a complication in that shoot and so it takes longer to edit than you think? Billing's another great area where things can slip through the cracks. I know that I talked to a lot of photographers who will hit December or January and they'll be, oh my goodness, I forgot to bill that client.
Or they haven't paid, and if it's a commercial or editorial, chances are maybe there's like a 90-day net.
Yeah, and that's the thing. 90-day net's a great example because you did the shoot 90 days ago.
Right.
Yeah, you're gonna forget about it. You got 10 other things going on. Blogging is like the first thing to go when we get busy. It seems. It's like, I haven't blogged in 6 months. I'm so busy. But you can't expect to have consistent traffic on you guys know, as the content.
Yeah, content is king, and especially the way that the search rankings are going now, Google is putting more and more emphasis in how it's ranking pages with how much social action is happening on those pages. And in order to get social action, you have to, on Google Plus or Facebook or Twitter, you actually have to have new content for people to like and share.
Yeah. And if you don't for a couple of weeks, it can really plummet. And you can lose the readers and the traffic that were relying on that consistency.
And your readers, at least some of them, in any case, contain a portion of people who could actually hire you, meaning whether you call them leads or potential customers. they're the people you should be sort of speaking to all the time. And if the blogging is the first thing to go, then blogging is a part of your marketing strategy overall, or at least it should be. You shouldn't just be blogging because everyone else is doing it. You should have a reason to do it, and if it's the first thing to go, you're basically cutting off one of your marketing arms. Obviously, one of them that's least expensive and maybe in most effective.
And that's the thing where a system can come in and help you out. If you type up, as just a thought, if you have a system that requires you to type up your blog post within 3 days after you shoot that event, while it's fresh on your mind, while you can still comment on the actual wedding itself, if you have a system that sets you up to succeed, then all of a sudden you're not 2 weeks behind, you're not 10 shoots behind on blogging. Your clients aren't going, well, you blogged my sister's wedding, why didn't you blog my wedding? You blogged my sister's family portrait session, why didn't you blog mine? Networking's another one that fits right into that. I know it's not listed, but blogging, networking. Networking is, for me, one of the fundamental ways that we drove and continue to drive business at Bauman Photographers, is meeting with like-minded vendors and meeting with like-minded clients and just staying top of mind. And I even in the middle of busy season, even in the middle of of shooting a lot, that's still a huge priority if that's something that you do to drive business, and it can't go away simply because you got behind. You're gonna suffer from that. Slideshows, updating your website, that's another very common thing that photographers don't get around to because they don't have a workflow for that. Email campaigns, and by campaigns I really just mean a newsletter to your clients, a drip campaign, all sorts of different things that we can do with email. Sales sessions, one of the best ways that that we would continue the life cycle of the client was to bring them to our studio after the shoot and work with them after the shoot. And a lot of photographers I talk to are like, it start off in January, February, March, I'm totally going to do that this year. And then what happens when we get busy, that goes. I speak to a lot of photographers on pricing and how to help them set up to get profitable pricing. And we set up these price lists. We set up this pricing strategy that depends on these sales sessions. I don't have to sell a ton, but that's part of the life cycle of that client is making sure you're in front of them and talking to them to fulfill what they want out of the shoot. And sometimes when we get busy and our workflow isn't done right, that falls at the wayside, and your profit is going to suffer, and your clients aren't going to get what they want. They needed that and required that. Or in print. So the list goes on. These are just some examples of bottlenecks that can get created when there's a kink, when we drop a ball, the proverbial example here. And each one of these is really, really important to the workflow and to our clients.
And to the bottom line of the business.
Exactly. So, I think that it helps to kind of identify. A lot of times people, like you kind of talked about at the beginning, they hear the word workflow and they're like, oh man, what does that really mean? What is that? Here's some good examples of areas that we can develop workflows for. We can develop a system for, and it can be optimized for that. I think that your system needs to be able to handle everything that you do, all the different facets of your business, and you want to set that up to succeed. So your system is about developing what works best for you, and every single photographer is going to be a little bit different, but you must have a system of some sort. I love the quote by Michael Gerber in the E-Myth Revisited. He's written quite a few books. I actually find he wrote the E-Myth, and then he wrote the E-Myth Revisited. I actually find the E-Myth Revisited better. I think it's like the first sequel I've ever liked more than the original in my life. But if you don't have that, I would definitely recommend you pick it up. It's the E-Myth Revisited, and he really is, in my opinion, one of the masters out there about setting up a system for your business. And his whole premise is to work on your business and not in it. And he talks about how, as business owners, we have to be steering the ship. We have to be not the people in it day to day. And so we have to constantly be working on our business, but not in it. And this book, he goes in the E-Myth Revisited, he goes to this path of how he takes an example of a business owner and takes them on a course of realizing that what they really need to do is develop a system for every single thing that they do in their business. And at that point, whether they choose to continue to be the one to do it or whether they choose to have somebody else do it, that's not really the point. The point is that they have a system. They've taken the time to put that system together. They've optimized that system, and it's structured, and it could be handed off if it needed to be. So then as you get busier, you have options. Then as you grow, you have options. Even if you aren't growing and you're maintaining, you have options, and you can take a look and work on your business rather than in it. You can decide one week that networking is more important than editing. You can decide one week to expand or to go on vacation. You can have a business that has defined workflows, and so that's the process that we really want to look at here is in defining your system. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 steps that I recommend going through. Certainly, I think the best way to look at it is, let me share with you what I did, and your mileage may vary, but this is what I did, because I didn't start off building a business that had great systems. I knew it was important. We all know it's important. I mean, right? It's kind of in the back of our mind.
On some level, yes.
It's kind of there. But we have 3 photographers at Bauman Photographers. We have myself and Bronson and Eder, and once the shoot started to stack up, it really became evident that systems were something that was going to save our business and save the way that we serviced our clients. And so there's really a 3-step process that I recommend going through, and it starts with number 1, writing the process down. And so when we say process, we're really talking about each one of the different things that you do in your business. So let's just take the example of doing a blog post. That's a process. That's one thing we do, and it has a certain set of actions, of tasks we go through to do that blog post. And so that's what you kind of have to sit and start by writing down the process for every single thing you do. And I really recommend that you are detailed about it. Think about every step that you go through and write that out. Again, you want this process to have everything you do, and you're going to be going through the process as you write it down. You're going to be thinking, oh, do I really do that? Why do I do that? That's a huge way. Write it down anyways, and just go through and outline your entire process that you do when you do each thing. Thing being, say, here, for example, blog post.
Jared, am I correct in assuming that in writing the writing process is not just a 1 to 20 list of the things that you should do, but it's also sort of an exploratory thing to get you to reveal what it is that you actually do versus what you think you do in your head.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is a lot of times as photographers, we don't do the same thing every single time. And that isn't to say that it's right or wrong necessarily, but it's to come up with a system that makes the most sense. And once we get to step, we're going to look back on this process and correct it and optimize it and fix it and look at it. But you're right, you have to have a system before you can fix the system, before you can make it better. And that was something that I realized is I would do things differently a lot of the time, and that's where I lost a lot of efficiency. And B, I was doing way too many steps for each process that I would go through. The blog post, I doing a blog post is kind of my favorite example, because when I got done with writing out the system for it, I think there were well over 100 steps. I think it was like around 120. And I mean, it's just like, this is just a blog post. Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous, Why on earth do I have 120 steps? And a lot of it was back and forth between programs. A lot of it was doing things that didn't need to be done. And so it's laborious to write it out. There's no doubt about it. It's something you want to chip away at. And again, let's keep in mind the big picture here. We're trying to find ways to optimize our systems and to optimize our workflow. And we have to do our workflow to fulfill what our clients are paying us for.
You're doing it regardless of whether or not you have a written system or a good system.
Exactly.
Period. You're doing it already, so you might as well do it better, with the end result of being either a more successful business, more time to spend with your kids, and better referrals from your clients, and a happier living lifestyle.
Exactly. You're doing it anyways, and a good system is going to make your clients happier. It's going to create more referrals. It's going to create more business, and it's also going to make you happier. And it's going to allow your business to grow in whatever direction you want it to. I never anticipated or planned on. I never started my business in order to sell it at all. But as ShootDotEdit grew and grew and grew, that became something that changed as my life went on. And I like to use that example because you never know what's going to come up in your life. And it's not necessarily selling your business, but having these systems is the fundamentals to allowing you to take your business where you want it to go. It's the fundamentals, because we do it anyways, but having it defined, having it optimized and streamlined allows you to do what you do best and allows you to grow your business in whatever direction you want to take it in the end. So that's why we're doing this. So once you have the process written out, now we get to go back and we get to look at it and we get to streamline it. It's really difficult at this point sometimes to figure out how to streamline it. But you want to look for areas that you're being inefficient. You want to look at areas that you're being redundant. You want to look into maybe different software that could help you out along the way, to different programs. You want to kind of figure out, oh man, if I could move that step here, if I could take that step out. You're really just trying to whittle away at it and fulfill the same process without doing quite as much. Because that's one of the things that when you look at, setting up, good systems, that's one of the most effective ways to increase your productivity, increase your efficiency. Kind of the optimized word that we've been floating around here is to just remove things. Every single time there's another step in your system, that's another opportunity for something to go wrong, for something to get caught, for something to get, for a ball to be dropped, for a kink in the armor, whatever phrase you want to go with. Every step you have, that's an opportunity for something to go wrong. And so we want to get rid of as many of these steps as possible while still fulfilling the end result, the end goal we want. We want to get a successful, well-branded, good-looking blog post up. What's the fewest amount of steps we can go through to do that? And that's the process. Kind of fun because you're kind of just looking at it and going, how can I whittle away with that? And we do this every year. We would do this every year at Bauman Photography. We'd review all of our steps and go through them and say, okay, we got that blog post down to 74 steps. Can we get it down to 65 this year? What do you think? What can we do? It's kind of a fun process. You kind of have to have a geeky attitude towards it, but you want to simplify the process as much as possible.
And so how that's something that it's on paper, on the slide here, it sounds like a very sort of simple thing to do, but actually going out and finding someone who knows more about something than you do and seeing how they do it can be a pretty difficult task depending on what it is. Do you have any sort of advice for people, for instance, just taking the example of the blog post, how you went about both systematizing that and then streamlining it to actually finding how to do that better?
Well, it's a great question. It's a great point because I think it brings up something that we all get caught in a rut. And by a rut, I mean we are comfortable with certain programs, we're comfortable with certain ways of doing things, and very oftentimes there are better ways of doing things, quicker ways of doing things. Technology is changing so fast nowadays that, a system you put in place this year, there might be a better one next year already. And so you can either do the research yourself, or one of the most effective things to do is to surround yourself with people that are experts in other areas. In San Diego, I and 3 other photographers would get together monthly. We'd get together monthly. Each of us, I can't say that we definitely started out this way with that in mind. Now looking back on it, I'm glad it worked out this way, that each of us kind of were specialists in certain areas. If I had it to do over again, I would definitely start off with this idea in mind of putting together a group of kind of mini specialists in your area. One of the guys in that group is fantastic at systems and was a huge help for us in saying, why are you using that program? Why are you doing this? We would talk one monthly meeting. We talked about our systems and our workflow to get from A to Z on a shoot and kind of shared them with each other. So there's a challenge there because I knew I was meeting with this group in a month and I had to get my workflow dialed in so I could share that. It's kind of that extra push, accountability.
It was an accountability. I mean, some places would call this sort of like an accountability group or something. And for whatever reason, at least in my experience, photographers will absolutely ask each other these types of things. How do you do this? What are you using for that? How did you like this? Or how are you editing? How did you get that effect? Over cocktails or some kind of mixer or some other thing, but they won't do it on their own necessarily, even though they should on a regular basis.
On a regular basis. And that accountability, I mean, sometimes that's just the last thing you need to kind of get the job done. I mean, I think it's been funny because we talked a little about this on my Creative Live class a few months ago, and some of the people formed a Facebook group, and they're holding each other accountable to this. I had dinner with one of them last week, and he was saying, "God, that group, the group of us that are in there, has been so great because there's sometimes when this is laborious and it's hard and it's long and it takes a lot of time, but knowing that I need to report back to that group next week is like that last little bit that I need to get through and do it and stuff." So, and then the other thing is once you get there, you get so many amazing ideas from other people who are experienced in this, who've already researched, who've already done their homework. You can share, and oftentimes you're going to be sharing things that they've never heard of. and you get a workflow out of that. For example, you get accountability, so you get the accountability to do the actual task, and then when you get there, you learn so much. I'd really recommend it for everyone, 4 or 5, maybe 6 people, setting, monthly meeting time, maybe over coffee or something like that, in the evenings, in the mornings, whatever it is.
And that number is, the 4, 5, 6 number is actually interesting because you wouldn't necessarily need every person to show up every single time.
No.
And you would still have enough people, if it were 2 or 3 every month, to make it a worthwhile meeting.
Right. And there's books out there on this. I mean, I gave one example. There's books out there, but, we all have a limited amount of time. And I think that we're all, not all of us, but photographers tend to be more social. I'm always like, hey, we can do this as a group. Let's do this group. I love hanging out with people, but get down and figure out how to, the added accountability, I think, is what happens when you get a group together. That goes beyond just reading a book on it, researching it yourself. And that accountability can be instrumental in crossing the finish line to setting up your system. So step 3. And step 3 is really where I got to as a business, is I had the process written down. I had gone through it and simplified it to the point where it was as effective as I could think of at that point in time. And now you get that choice that we talked about of doing it yourself or assigning it. And what I really began to realize, and I'll kind of move on to the next screen here, is I started to ask myself a series of questions so that I could make decisions about where to put my time. I began to learn as Bauman photographers grew that there was only so many things I could do, and that's actually where ShootDotEdit got started. It was back in 2006, and Garrett and I were just completely overwhelmed with shooting and then editing, and that was all we were doing. I think I had 42 weddings that year, I think, and Garrett something similar. Bronson was shooting a ton of weddings. I think he shot more that year than me, 44. And we were just basically shooting and editing, and we weren't doing any of the other things I listed, blogging.
No marketing,
no
networking, no business development.
None. And I wasn't even that happy because the shooting was fun, but then I would just think about how much editing I had to do. And, so there's all that that's baked in. And so that was right around the time when we were dialing in our systems, and Garrett and I got together and we thought, hey, if we could hire an editor and train them and have some of these systems in place, and they could edit our images, then we could go back to doing the things that only we can do in our business: networking, blogging, marketing, things like that. And so we did that, and it worked great. And it was this, I still remember the feeling I got when I got my first job back.
You hadn't edited yourself.
That I hadn't edited myself, and back then it came in the mail, and because we didn't have upload at the time. And I remember putting it in, and it wasn't perfect. It was his first job. It was a little cool for me, but man, the feeling of going, those are my images. I shot those Saturday. They're done. They look amazing. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? So, so that was really the start of ShootDotEdit. Photographers started asking us, hey, the word caught on. Hey, I hear you have an editor. Can we take part in that? And we thought, well, maybe we should just let in like 10 more people. We can hire another editor, and that would cover our costs. And we opened in 2007 and had a wait list over almost 1,000 photographers that summer. So we kind of thought, well, we got to either go big or go home on this. But ShootDotEdit's a great example of asking myself, what are the things that only I can do? And you need to ask yourself that in your workflow, even if you're not going to end up assigning anything. I'm not saying you have to assign things. We all are at different life cycles in our business, and we all have different goals and whatnot, but you still need to ask yourself these questions, because you want to be doing the process because you chose to do it and because you believe it's best for your business and yourself, rather than just doing it because that's the only person who can do it at that point in time. So you need to ask yourselves, what are the things only I can do? For me, it's always been shooting and marketing and networking. Those are the things that Bauman photographers that really only I could do. I when a client books me, that was pretty obvious. I'm the only one who can go out there. But I also felt like marketing the company and driving that side of the things was something only I can do. And the good news is that was also a strength of mine, and I enjoyed it. And so when I found things that fit all 3 categories, those are the things that I knew that I could excel at and grow the business and be happy at the same time. And the rest, I slowly started trusting experts with. People who were better at it than I are, people who did that more often than I did, and that's where growth really started to happen for me at Bauman Photographers. That's where I was able to grow the company from where we were in 2005, 2006 to kind of where we are now with not only just the weddings but also the corporate and a system that allowed me to go on and start a second company, which was what my goal was, but it isn't everybody's goal. I think that the more you identify the things that only you can do, the things that are your strengths and the things that you enjoy and bring to the table, then you can make choices as you grow about where you want to be spending your time and your energy and your resources. So, obviously ShootDotEdit is one of many different specialists that you can plug into your business. That's the one that I'm most familiar with, being one of the founders and now the president of the company. And ShootDotEdit is really the first choice post-processing partner for the Wedding Pro and everything that the Wedding Pro shoots. It's fun because as the years have gone by, we've developed the slogan "Fast is best," and that really just comes out of our focus on systems and how we implement and how we integrate into a photographer's workflow. A system that allows you, again, removing some of those steps in the process allows you to be faster, and a faster system allows you to succeed more, allows for less to fall through the cracks. But for us at ShootDotEdit, we're about plugging ourselves in as a specialist into a workflow for a photographer. We're a part of their workflow. We don't really replace many photographers' workflows. We are a part of their workflow. We're a part of their client experience, and that's what we handle, and those are the things that we act as specialists for. A couple of things to highlight about what we do. We talked about the turnaround time, where we always like to talk about as fast as 48 hours, and so that means you can shoot a wedding on Saturday, and next thing you know, you can have it to us on Monday. We can have it back to you Wednesday or Thursday, and you can kind of move on. I love that because from a workflow standpoint, it's really cool to show up the next Saturday at a wedding, and you kind of put to bed the previous shoot.
You're done from in
many regards, from all that. So that's pretty cool and a lot of fun there. Our color wizard is the solution to a lot of photographers saying, I have a very particular style. How do I know you're going to edit it to my style? And so the color wizard is our way, it's your way of telling us how you want your images edited. And so we have actually over 100 different color profiles. And so you tell us how you want your images edited. And that in conjunction with dot preview, which is our guarantee. It's our guarantee. And so what we do is if you order a dot preview, you get a sampling of images from throughout the day, edited to your color profile, returned to you within 1 business day, free of charge. And so you get to look at the way the editing is being done. You get to look at about 10 images and say, yes, that is exactly how I want my images to come back. Edit the rest of the job. Yeah, that's how I want it. Or you can say, ooh, I'm glad we did this. That's not how I want the images to come back. And we'll do it again until we get it right, until we find the color profile that's right for you. And so, and again, going back to workflow, these are the things that we've learned along the way. It's the same process for us at ShootDotEdit. We didn't start off with a color wizard. We didn't start off with dot preview. We started off, but it took time to figure out our defined workflow, get it out on paper, optimize it, systematize it, make it better for both us and the photographer, make it so there's less steps, because the more steps we have to go through, the more opportunity we have to fail. We optimize that workflow. So it's kind of funny being a solution to photographers and their workflow, but yet we're going through the same process that photographer is going through when they use us. So.
Jared, do you know any post-processing services, or maybe even ShootDotEdit falls into this category, where you'll work with commercial or editorial photographers, not specifically for weddings, but sort of on that end of the industry?
I don't know too many. Because what we're doing at ShootDotEdit is basically we're working with like a lot of images. Wedding photographers are going to send us 600-700
Right.
images at a time. Commercial shooters are more working with individual images, and so that's why for us as a workflow, it hasn't really made sense for us to take part in that. We're also specialists. We specialize in skin tones. Skin tones. That's what weddings are all about. And for commercial, we don't specialize in that. That's just not what we're best at because it's a kind of a different workflow. I know of companies, but I don't know any that I would, that I've been in their ecosystem and used them enough to say, go here or go there. It's a great question, though. And we're constantly looking at expanding. One of the things we're doing, actually just starting next week, we have a little bit of a soft launch. We're expanding into working with not just wedding pros, but portrait pros as well. And so we've kind of, over the years, as we've learned from portrait photographers, that's a huge need as well. And we feel like it still fits within what we do. We edit skin tones really well, and portrait photographers are shooting, people. And since we edit people really well, it's going to be a natural gravitation for us, and we'll be able to work with portrait professionals as well. We're gonna, start testing our unlimited plan with portrait photographers as well. We have an unlimited plan out for unlimited editing for a fixed monthly price for wedding pros, and we'll do that with portrait pros. For commercial, I don't know who to recommend for that. It's a good question, though.
It's interesting because I think my advice to that question might be to go out into the sort of assistant in digital tech market in your local area, or even a major area. Find someone who does assistant work, does digital teching work, and chances are they are also a photographer with an interest in that specialty, and to actually see if they're using your editor of choice, whether it be Photoshop, Lightroom, or Capture One, and see if they're the kind of person you can work with to do the basic kinds of image corrections you need, and the basic kind of image corrections that you know are necessary to sort of deliver proofs to the client, but not the finished file. So just to get the entire shoot to sort of a exposure equalized, contrast and color equalized state, and then deliver it back to you, I would first sort of look at that kind of person rather than a sort of like larger service like ShootDotEdit if you can't find one of those.
Yeah, one of the most common questions I get is, Jared, like, why would I go with a ShootDotEdit, for example, over somebody in my area, or over a friend, my assistant, things like that? And you have to sit down and make a decision about kind of where you want this specialty or this process to fit into your workflow. Where a ShootDotEdit is great to have in your team is because we never go on vacation, we never get sick, we'll never move on, we'll never get busy or get overwhelmed. We have that bandwidth, we have that scalability to be your partner through busy season, slow season, through all the different facets. And so you kind of want to make sure that as you identify areas of your workflow, look at it as a process that you can graduate into. Talk to your local, going back to that local network thing. A lot of us have solutions that we utilize that are really wonderful. But what you want to make sure you keep in mind is, if I insert whatever it is into my workflow, and there's a lot of different solutions besides ShootDotEdit that work, that you want to insert for blogging, that you want to insert for, we're just talking about color correction here. There's different partners that you can work with, experts that you can work with at every step along the way, for album design and for the yada yada yada. But you want to look at and make sure that if you plug them in, your system and your workflow is going to be better for it, not worse for it. It's going to be more efficient, not less efficient, and it's going to be more scalable and not less scalable. So you can grow with it, whatever it is,
And so for my own work, I don't, I shoot a lot of editorial stuff, and a lot of it, most of my stuff is music, and the turnaround time is sort of on the, unfortunately, social media news cycle. And so I get done with, let's say, a concert one night, I have to immediately process all of the images, all of the selects, and have them uploaded to PhotoShelter for the editor to download it and post, almost sometimes even within hours of the event.
Jeez.
So in my own
so fast is truly best in your industry.
In my industry. But unfortunately, going back to sort of the system and workflow thing, at least for that kind of job, it's not something that I can conceivably stop doing, even though I don't absolutely love it. But in my own workflow, as we're going through this sort of the presentations, I was writing down the things that I should, given your advice, absolutely give away. And so my own things are sort of, I absolutely want to give away answering inquiries.
Yep. And that's a system. I mean, you're going to be saying something pretty similar to almost every inquiry, and you can personalize the intro and the conclusion. But I mean, that's something that can definitely be systematized. And
so, would you recommend that I literally write out in like a Google Doc or a document somewhere exactly how I want these things to go?
Our studio has a list of over 150 template emails that I've written all myself. Every single one. Every time we answer a question at the studio that we don't have a template for, we make a template for it, we save it, and we use that down the road.
And so, if I'm like sort of guessing this correctly, you would answer one email and then put it into the template doc.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next time a new question comes in, answer that email just as you would,
Mm-hmm.
and put that into the doc. So you wouldn't necessarily have to sit down
and write 150 emails in one day.
And write 150
exactly.
templates for 8 hours in one day. You could do it gradually, and at the end of the year, so to speak, or 6 months,
right?
Or however long it was that naturally took you to get to, let's say, whatever 80% complete, so to speak. You could then hand that off, and the other 20% that needed your special attention you could either still do or have the person infer from that point.
You just hit the nail on the head with, and not just with emails, but with every solution you build. And I think a lot of photographers, you brought up a great point that I've forgotten to mention, a lot of photographers kind of view systems, but also trusting specialists or whatever, as all or nothing. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You just kind of said that'll get you about 80% of the way there. I always talk about emails as a great example, because with emails, you never want to send out, I don't say never, but rarely do you want a client to just get an obviously templated message that has no personalization, all that. But we can take an email where they email up, let's take weddings for example, and they ask about, they ask the same 15 questions before the wedding,
Yeah.
And they ask, what time do I need to get ready? Hey, how do we do this? What's a first look? I've heard about a first look. What time do I need to tell my florist that the flowers? They ask you all the same questions. These are all templated answers you can have. And you still want to say, hey, Susie, it was so great seeing you last week. The example I always use is, I remember, I always think of you now whenever I see red shoes, because you're wearing those bright red shoes I was talking about. I saw a great pair of red shoes. I should send you a picture over. Template, template, template. Okay, awesome. I'm totally going to send you a picture of those red shoes, or I'll make sure I send them to you next time I see them. See ya. And what you've done is you've reduced your workload by 80-90%, and not to go back to ShootDotEdit, but that's what we always tell photographers. Don't look at us as the only solution, as you have to send us your images and never look at them again and just publish them straight. A lot of photographers will do the cull first and then just send us for color corrections. Most photographers embrace what we kind of call the 90-10 model. They send it to us, and we get all the images looking consistently awesome. And then instead of photographers having to spend all this time making them consistent, now they just go back in and spend an hour and add their signature touch. They add their touch that makes those images unique to their brand, but they've reduced 90% of the workload. And that's something you can look at in every area, in emails, in blogging, in design, in everything that you do, is don't look at it as all or nothing. See how far, and just chip away at it and see how far you can get it to where you can save yourself as much time as possible. And that also makes you more efficient, because now you're giving, for example, in the emails, every client the same answer. And every client knows what to expect. And that's where you create a system that's going to create wonderful, long-lasting clients for life, because they all got the same experience.
And how do you avoid, I guess, how do you recommend testing things like this, testing new additions to the workflow, whether they be things you're planning on doing yourself to optimize what you're already doing, or whether you're taking something off your plate and giving it to a specialist? How do you test out how that's going to work without selling the farm?
Slow season, or a time period where you're slow. I mean, obviously there's times in our business where we have to make quick decisions. We have to change things up. Something's going wrong. We have to make a quick shift. But this is the stuff to do and to build on and to practice when you're not flush with shoots. Mm-hmm. When, most of us have a slower period to our business and a busier period. There's some seasonality, obviously, in weddings and portraits, but really in all sorts of different types of product, commercial, whatever. There's slow periods, and that's when you want to test this. That's when you want to when you want to spend the time building it, when you want to spend the time testing it, and then because then you have the time to react, because chances are there's going to be a kink or two that you need to work out. Nothing wrong with that. And that doesn't mean it's bad or it's not going to work. But if you have the time frame to do it in a January or February rather than in October or November,
right,
then you can respond, make the adjustments, and you don't have to worry about it derailing a whole set of clients, rather maybe just one or two, or maybe because you had the time, you catch it in advance and it's not something that gets affected.
Be sort of mindful enough to look for the times or periods of year or even of the month where you could actually have time to improve the systems, as it were, not to sort of leave this webinar right now when you've got 20 other things to do and try to make up systems.
Yeah, this is not an all or nothing thing. This is you want to chip away at this. I mean, usually for example, like at Bauman Photographers, we'll set up our workflow and we'll get going. And our busy season starts in about April and goes through October into November. And by June, Ed and I were already sitting there looking at each other, going like, oh, that's not working great. We put that in, and I'm not so sure about that. Or, man, we put that in, but that just uncovered 2 more problems. And the decisions are always like, is it something that has to be fixed right now, or is it just something that could be optimized? And honestly, if it's just something that can be optimized, we'll wait until the slow season to optimize it. We'll just keep a list, and then next time we get through in December, we'll sit down and we'll start optimizing those things, because you don't want to just be constantly changing your workflow. You don't want to be constantly adjusting, constantly going back and forth. You want to have a season where you go through with it, and that's what keeps you efficient and stuff. And sure, there's things that you want to fix if it's direly important. But you're right. Coming off this webinar, start chipping away at it. So start thinking about areas that you don't feel you enjoy, you aren't strong in, you feel you could use the help in. Find those areas you do enjoy. With the areas you do enjoy and you feel like you're good at, and the areas you don't like, start making that system, start that process, start thinking about vendors you might want to look at or areas you want to hold on to, what you excel at and how you're going to grow that. And slowly you can build this process, get it dialed in so you have this optimized workflow. But it's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight.
And what advice would you have to, it sounds like from your experience running a wedding studio with multiple shooters and some level of staff, that you could bounce these sort of ideas off of a lot of people. But what sort of advice do you have to the more or less sort of island style lone wolf photographer?
A solopreneur, as I like
yes.
to call them. Yeah. we're entrepreneurs, but we're really solopreneurs, because we're individuals in this business. I mean, you need to surround yourself with people that, I like to say, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Get a group together. Going back to it, that group is instrumental to your success. And you're going to learn from them. You're going to be able to test from them, and you're also going to get ideas from them. So you kind of learn in a manner of which you get to hear what they're doing and put some of those things into practice. You get to test your ideas. You get to bounce ideas off of each other. But at both Bauman Photographers and then at ShootDotEdit, all of our best projects and developments have come from our entire team, from everyone working together. It hasn't really come from one individual. Dot Preview, Color Wizard, these things I can remember when they were thought about, and they were thought about over all sorts of different conversations that were pulled together. And these are great ideas, and then the workflow that got put together for each of those is very systematized, very dialed in, but it involves different people doing different things. It involves different processes, all of them specialized by different people. And we are on a bit of an island as a solopreneur, as individual photographers, and so you kind of have to mimic that same environment. If you don't have a big staff, well, mimic the benefits of a big staff. Surround yourself with people that can be a sounding board. To that point, to kind of close on that, I also recommend get a few people in your life that are smart but aren't photographers.
Yeah.
Because we get so focused on our way of doing things in our niche industry that sometimes the best ideas have come from people who aren't in this industry but are still small business owners or still solopreneurs or still workflow specialists. And the best ideas come from them going, well, hey, in my industry, we do this. Have you ever thought about that? And it's like, no, I haven't ever thought about that, but that's wonderful. And thank you. I think a lot of times we get so focused in what's around us that it's hard for us to think outside the big picture.
And so there was a question about what kinds of jobs can ShootDotEdit handle. Is it just weddings, or will you take sort of all lifetime events or graduations, prom photos? What's the scope here?
What's the scope? Well, we specialize in the wedding pro and everything that the wedding pro shoots. And so the way that we've come up with that is what we look at when we service a wedding pro, like somebody who calls themselves a professional wedding photographer. They shoot weddings, they shoot portraits, they shoot high school seniors, they shoot boudoir, they shoot engagement, they shoot bar mitzvahs, they shoot bat mitzvahs. All of these things we are apt, ready, and specialized and experts in handling. And that's going back to skin tones. We edit people, and so in other words, if you want to think about a big picture, if it's involving people, we're the first choice for those. And if it doesn't, we're just kind of admitting that's just not our area of expertise. Even though we're good at color correction, we specialize. We're experts in color correction for the wedding program they shoot, which breaks down to people. We have people.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I think we are almost out of time.
That flew by.
But
fun sitting in here. I'm not just staring at a computer screen. We're actually having a good time talking back and forth.
Well, for those of you who come to PhotoShelter webinars on a more regular basis, they're normally done sort of regardless of where the various people are in the entire world. Sometimes we've done webinars with people in Singapore, and we're here in New York. But Jared is actually in the PhotoShelter office with us here, because if you're not in New York, there's a lot of sort of stuff going on in the industry with Photo Plus Expo this week, and I think we'll close on that. So thanks so much for joining us here.
It's been great. Thanks,
and
Chris.
wait, I think we have one more slide.
Yeah.
If you are a PhotoShelter member, you have a 10% discount off your first color correction or album design job with ShootDotEdit, and you can access that discount within your PhotoShelter account. Just log in, and I believe it's under the Community tab in the navigation. It'll be right there. But please check out the webinar schedule at photoshelter.com and join us again. Thanks so much.